Namaskara to everybody. Thank you for coming over and being part of this entire journey of ours. And I'm super excited to have Dev, Rajesh, Shripal, and Dheeraj with me and Dipti on this journey today. What is this whole concept of Antar Prerana? If I can just spend a couple of minutes on that first. Antar Prerana is primarily the inner motivation. You know, what in the Bhagavad Gita is referred to as the Antakarana. For an entrepreneur to commit herself or himself on a particular journey. All of us as entrepreneurs will agree with me that entrepreneurship can be a very, very lonely journey. You know, it can be a pretty lonely journey. It can be an interesting journey, and it can be full of interesting ups and downs, and maybe more downs than ups and more ups than downs. But it is this particular journey that we love, and that's the reason why we've embarked on this journey. And I'm hoping that today, in all the people that are seeing this particular program and participating in this particular program, we will share with you some very interesting insights. So before we go ahead, let me ask you a question, and I'd like you to please answer it in the chat, if you don't mind, so that we can call out some of those answers that you've given. So those of you who are already entrepreneurs, or those of you who are contemplating on becoming an entrepreneur, my question is very simple. Why are you on this journey? Okay, so if you can please let the chat box get completely abuzz. Let's try and figure out if you can answer in the chat, and you will understand why I'm asking you to type in the chat and not speak. Right? Why are you on this entrepreneurship journey? Yeah. So Rahul, first guy off the room, have nothing else to Rahul, that is a brilliant answer, my friend. Have nothing else to do? Absolutely. I mean, what a great answer to do. Vasudha says, to use my experience and abilities to make a better world. Lovely, Vasudha. Arun says, to impact people's lives in a significant way. Fantastic, Arun. That's nice. Vinayak Prasad says, to balance inner and outside life. Lovely, Prasad. Vijeta says, to create job opportunities. Nice. Wow. And Sesha says, to be purposeful, to follow my passion. Wow, now it's really, really buzzing there. So Vinayak says, to fulfill our tendencies, vasanas. Lovely. Prasad says, to balance inside and outside world. Okay, nice. To be on a purposeful journey. Very nice. Want to be remembered through positive impact. Lovely, Dinesh. Let it keep coming, folks. Jahania says, to provide job opportunities. All right. Shripal says, only way to give people more upliftment. Absolutely, Shripal. Lovely. Kaushik says, I hate to see patients suffer emotional trauma. Very nice, Kaushik. What a beautiful purpose that is. I want to possibly alleviate self-retrospection. Lovely. Wow. I think we've got a great panel today. Narendra Singh ji says, to contribute in making society a better place. Very nice. Vinay Dura says, commencement speech, very quotes, when you lose every second point on average, you learn not to dwell on every shot. Absolutely, Vinay. Okay, Sneha says, to see how far I can go. Kanchan says, to work for greater good. Lovely. So we've got some great answers, and keep it flowing on the chat box. We'll keep the chat box open today, for a little while. And I think, Shreya, we can maybe in the next 1 minute close the chat box so that we don't get disturbed. Right? Shreya, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Lovely. So if you can just close the chat box.
Sure.
Great. So let's understand this whole, the link between the Bhagavad Gita and an entrepreneur's inner journey is a fascinating link. I've been reading about the Bhagavad Gita, and I've been trying to practice the Gita. I still am a student. I'm in no ways can I claim that I happen to know some part of the Bhagavad Gita, because when I think like that, I suddenly, discover something and I say, my God, now let me go back to scratch and let me start learning again. This whole manodisha, this whole mental conditioning that we are all part of, is something that we need to understand. And why the Bhagavad Gita, and why should why this timeless, song divine can help us understand how do we go on this particular journey and figure it out, and figure out what do we need to do. Like Madan says, we are so external focused. I think the time is also very important for us to dwell within and figure out what is it that we need to be looking at within ourselves, and find out how we can do. Conditioning is an interesting challenge, and conditioning hits every one of us. There is no human being that I've met in the last 44 years that I've been working and interacting with people who can ever claim to say that, I am not at all impacted by conditioning. Because conditioning is something that starts in the womb and, goes on right till the time you actually exit the world. There is some conditioning input or the other, conscious, unconscious, positive, neutral, negative, with an intention, without an intention, happens by chance. But this is something that keeps happening to each one of us in our life all along. What is the challenge of conditioning? The challenge of conditioning is that it can push us into three types of action. The first, it can push us into inaction, where you say that, look, there's no point. What's the use? Let me not do anything. That's one kind of an inaction that can happen. The second, it can push you into reaction. How can this happen to me? How can you say this to me? This is again a conditioning issue. Or it can push us into inefficient action. And inefficient action is that, when we try and we start blaming circumstances, we try and blame the external world for things that are not working for us. All of this is part of our conditional mental makeup. And it is this that we need to explore and figure out how we can overcome. The Bhagavad Gita itself has so many interesting nuggets. And in the next 20 weeks, Dipti and I have put together, Dipti, me, and Shreya, I must tell you, we put together about 20 interesting topics. And on each day, with a panel that we are very privileged to have with us, we'll explore each of these concepts and figure out how we as entrepreneurs can understand this and use some of these thoughts, use some of these ideas in terms of figuring out how can they be implemented in our life. So this is what we're going to be doing. So today we're talking about conditioning. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about, an entrepreneur as a karma yogi. Day after tomorrow we're going to be talking about the entrepreneur as a Stithapragna. And we will keep exploring each of these concepts as we keep going along every day. It'll be a different every week when we talk. So if we pick up the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and initially we are introduced to three very interesting kinds of conditioning, 3 or 4. Okay, the first is Dhritarashtra's conditioning. Now, Dhritarashtra is the king. He is the only person who could have stopped the war. He could have called back his sons. He could have called back his brother's sons and said, look, don't fight this war. It is a foolish war to fight. But his conditioning is such that he is looking and he is desperately hoping that somehow his sons will win this war. And once and for all, he's going to be proven right. So we'll meet this kind of conditioning in our life as entrepreneurs. People who are desperate, people who will, who are trying their very best to do things that maybe even fall on the side of adharma. The next conditioning that we find is that of a Duryodhana. Now, he is someone who's a bully. All his life he's been a bully. All his life he's got away with doing the wrong things. And we find that kind of a conditioning again in shlokas 4, 5, and 6. When Duryodhana actually goes to Drona and explains to him, like a typical bully, he starts off by praising the Pandava warriors. Okay. And this is his conditioning, because he is stuck in that, saying that, look, I'm a bully. I need to get my way out. I don't care who's in front of me. I just need to do what I think is right. And we find so many characters like this in our life as entrepreneurs. People who are unreasonable, people who will argue with us, people who will, just be obnoxious because they want to be obnoxious and they want to hurt us, and, they want to push us down in life. The third, we hear Drona. Now, here is again an Acharya. Okay. He's a teacher. He knows that he is fighting on the side of Adharma, and he just keeps quiet. And then we come across Arjuna. Now, Arjuna is an extremely, extremely interesting character. From an entrepreneurial perspective, I keep joking, and with due apologies to all my friends who are, this kind of graduates, Arjuna is a classic IIT Madras, IIM Ahmedabad, pass out. Okay. He is the best qualified guy in the war. I mean, there's nobody who's as qualified as Arjuna is. He is single-hand. He is like everything. And he's got all the latest gadgetry that you can think of. The latest laptop, the latest software, the latest phone. He's got every single thing that an entrepreneur thinks he needs or she needs to succeed in life. Okay. Gifted, great education, got all the technology that you want, everything. And look at the team. My goodness. I mean, can you imagine this team that is working with Arjuna? I mean, Krishna himself, Hanuman there on his, in the flag, Adishesha in his wheels. What more do you want? You've got the best team, you've got the best technology, you've got the best of everything. But Arjuna's conditioning, again, is very interesting. It swings between two levels. On the one hand, you have someone who is just a little arrogant. And it is this arrogance in Arjuna that tells Krishna, I want to know who is against me. Who is it that is motivated to fight against me? I want to see them. So, it is this innate pride, this arrogance of Arjuna that says, look, I want to see who's there. Come on, let me get ready. And mind you, he picks up his bow ready to fight. And here is where I think a great coach, and here is where I think we as charter members of TIE can really help the whole world. Look at what Krishna does. And I think here is something which is very interesting. What Krishna does is something very interesting. When Arjuna uses the language of a warrior, picks up his bow and says, I want to see who's there in front of me. Who's got this durbuddhi for this yuddha? I want to see this guy. Come on, bring him on. Okay. Almost on the border of false bravado. But Krishna knows one serious challenge that Arjuna has in his conditioning. All his life, he has deferred to his elders. He has always accepted somebody else's decision blindly. And I think Krishna's challenge is, in the war, if by chance a situation comes when this guy's conditioning will come at that time, then what? I think as entrepreneurs, this is an interesting thing. When we are about to start this enterprise, when we are in this enterprise, when we want to scale, when we want to sustain, I think it's important to have a conversation with someone as to what is it that can come in between us and the success that we want. And this is what Krishna does to us. And request Dipti to take us through the first thing. This is what Krishna does. Yes, Dipti?
भीष्मद्रोणप्रमुखः सर्वेषां च महिक्षिताम् उवाच पार्थः पश्यैतान् समवेतान् कुरुनिति. In the presence of Bhishma, Dronacharya, and all other kings, Sri Krishna said, O Parth, behold these Kurus gathered here.
So, Krishna could have done something interesting, no? He could have taken the chariot and placed it in front of Duryodhana. Or even worse, he could have placed it in, there are 11 Akshohinis there. He could have gone and placed it in front of Dushasana. And the war would have started immediately because, this guy is already ready. He wants to fight. And the war is on. Okay? And look at what very interestingly Krishna says, O Parth, behold who are gathered here. And he's looking at Bhishma, he's looking at Drona, and, he's looking at all the other kings in front of him, who he himself has just said, I want to know who are here who want to fight with me, who are against us, who are on the side of Adharma. I want to know this, so bring them on. I want to see who these guys are. And this is where the conditioning of Arjuna comes through. Dipti?
Tatra pashyat sthitan partha pitrunata pitamahan acharyan matulan bratran putran pautran sakhistatha. There Arjun could see stationed in both armies his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, cousins, sons, nephews, grandnephews, friends, father-in-law, and well-wishers.
Okay. Now here is the challenge that we've got. Here is a guy who says, look, I want to fight. And it is this conditioning that perhaps Krishna is aware of. And he brings him there, and Arjuna actually is seeing a completely different set of people. As Dipti was mentioning, he's seeing Acharya, he's seeing Pitama, he's seeing Pitra, he's seeing brothers, he's seeing sisters, he's seeing brothers-in-law, he's seeing his bandhus, he's seeing his kinsmen, and not people who are fighting against him. It is this challenge of conditioning that hits all of us as entrepreneurs, sometimes at perhaps the wrong time in our life. And it is this conditioning that completely pulls us down in life. In my experience, Swami Chinmayananda calls all the manifestations that Arjuna is now rattling off, okay? When he sees this, he says that, look, it's a weak mind that will look for all these hundreds of excuses. This anxiety disorder that comes to take over in Arjuna. Okay. So what does he say? He says, my limbs droop. Okay, my mouth is dry. My whole mind is completely confused. Brahmanti manaha. Okay. I'm going everywhere. I'm feeling, I just want to leave everything. I don't want to take this fight. I see a lot of false omens, and he starts making excuses as to why he should not fight. He says, look, the family will get destroyed. Family values will get destroyed if I were to do all of this. And he keeps giving one excuse after another excuse, after another excuse, after another excuse, not to perform what he ought to perform, which is his duty. Okay? And the interesting thing is that throughout this whole exercise, he keeps appealing to Krishna using different words, some of them even words of friendship, as to why are you pushing me into this? What is going on? Why are we fighting this fight? This is not meant for us. This is the kind of conditioning that hits us. So we're ready, we're ready to go in and do that presentation. We're ready, we've got this product ready, we've got this service ready as an entrepreneur. Everything but everything is something that we're very confident about. And yet, at just that right point of time, our confidence deserts us. It's important for us to understand that it's got nothing to do with who we are seeing in front. It has everything to do with our mental makeup. all of Arjuna's excuses that he keeps giving to Krishna one after the other, after the other, after the other, are really his excuses, are his mental makeup. It's got nothing to do with the people who are in front of him, though he uses this. As leaders of enterprises, as entrepreneurs, whenever we hear this kind of excuses being, either given to us by the people who are working for us, or we are giving it to ourselves, that's worse. And we are justifying this. It is this aspect of conditioning that we've got to be very, very careful about. Because conditioning is what will push us into inaction. It will push us into a reactive mode. It will push us into an inefficient action mode. We'll talk about these different kinds of action a little later. But at this point of time, I think it's important that we recognize and remember that whatever we are going to be doing as entrepreneurs, we need to do it from a significant action perspective. And this is the kind of conditioning that the greatest warrior on earth, someone who's got everything going for her, comes up with. And he completely crumbles to the extent of putting his bow down and saying, I will not fight. This aspect of an entrepreneur's inner journey is very, very significant. Because we are today finding more and more people wanting to give up. They say it is because of external conditions, but the real reason is internal. What I'd like to do is I'd like to invite our panel members, who are all seasoned entrepreneurs in their own rights. I'd like them to share with us their own thoughts on conditioning and what kind of conditioning issues they've faced, uh, either themselves or with the people that they've been helping in life, and what are some simple things that we can do to overcome these conditioning issues. And while they're doing their share, I'd really like you all to participate in this, and likewise in the chat box, if you can type what you think can be done when we face these conditioning issues. So may I bring into this conversation, first of all, Dheeraj. Uh, Dheeraj, I understand, has a hard stop at about 8:20. So Dheeraj.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ram. And it is just amazing about the insights that you shared. And I've been very inspired by Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar ji, and I listened to his commentaries and would like to share what I've learned and experienced here is. So I feel, where was the Bhagavad Gita given? It was not given in the air-conditioned palace or, very beautiful, peaceful place. It was given in the middle of a battlefield. So the coach really has to be amazing to give knowledge in the middle of a battlefield. So Krishna exemplifies the best possible coach ever. And today entrepreneurship is no less than a battle every day that we fight. There is conflict at workplace. We spoke about the inner battles, we spoke about the outer battles. So there is so much that an entrepreneur is fighting every single day. So what again I've learned is how Krishna strategically and very skillfully places the chariot in the middle of the two armies. So when there is conflict, are we seeing the conflict from both the sides, or are we taking a biased decision as an entrepreneur? That's extremely important. So coming in the center and seeing both sides so that we make a informed decision is extremely important as a entrepreneur. We were talking about the mental model of the Dhritarashtra. So what I've learned is, there are three obstacles. One is like Putra Ishna, one is like Loka Ishna, and like one is Dhan Ishna. So Dhritarashtra's mental model was Putra Ishna. He was so biased and he really wanted his son to win. So and he was blinded by his ego. So as entrepreneurs, are we taking informed decisions? Are we taking correct decisions, or are we biased by our own ishnas of of greed, of fame, or attachment? That is also very important, I feel. And Madan touched that very beautifully in the beginning, that there is the inner battle between the heart and the mind, and that really reflects in our behavior outside. So as entrepreneurs, are we centered? Are we able to fight with the inner battles first? Can we be peaceful with ourselves, and then can we deal with our outer battles? Can we deal with people outside? That is extremely important. And today we know, we are living in a post-COVID era where aggression and depression has become the biggest war that we are ever fighting. And employee mental wellness is extremely important. So, as entrepreneurs, what are we doing to protect the health of the organization, the mental health, I'm saying? Are we first of all mentally sane, and then are we promoting that in our people, so that we can really be creative? Because creativity will come only when we are peaceful. An aggressive mind, a disturbed mind can never have creative thoughts. So can we really foster creativity? Can we really foster team spirit, team bondings, despite our difference of opinions, despite our different perspectives? Can we still foster a culture of going ahead together? I think that is extremely important as an entrepreneur. So I feel that the entrepreneur first has to be mentally, strong, peaceful, Stithapragna, centered, and then take everyone together and deal with his daily battles. That's what I feel. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, Dheeraj. That's a great perspective. Who'd like to go next? I mean, anybody? Shripal, Rajesh? Yeah, Shripal, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I think one of the best part of this conditioning mindset is that there is a positive and a negative side of that. And first, let me put it in three part. My thing is that everyone goes through that conditioning, and no one has spared. Like we all saw that Duryodhana took Arjuna, everyone were on the conditioning mind. And in my journey also, I think I also had a conditioning of giving excuses. So we'll give excuse of, see, the competitor is giving cheap, that's why I'm not able to do. And so even being an entrepreneur, if I can give excuses to my board or my investors, my employee will definitely do that. So I realized at some one point of time that this is something which I'm not doing right. By giving excuses, things are not going to go in good great side. So one of those days, I think I heard Mahatria. Okay? So he said one beautiful thing. Uh, Arjuna wanted to run away from the war, but Krishna said, "You can go, but I cannot go because I have taken up the responsibility of uh, motivating you or keeping you in the war and make you win, and I cannot shun away my responsibility. The easiest thing I can do is that okay, you don't want to fight. What is that I can do? I can also go away." But so I think entrepreneur is like a Krishna role, where everyone need to fight that is in spite of any conditioning. You have to see beyond things because the purpose is bigger than the uh, objections. That is one aspect. Second aspect, very importantly, that helped me is understand as a Krishna is that there is either doing pain and pleasure or right and wrong. So the story of Duryodhana is pain and pleasure. He always enjoyed pleasure over pain. He wanted to be irrespective of whether it is right or wrong. And Arjuna wanted to be right and wrong, but be miserable, always painful whenever he does right thing. So Krishna says, hey, live like me. I'm killing that someone and I'm dancing on that. So I'm doing right thing and also pleasure. It's not that pain. So I think as an entrepreneurial journey, if we can change that conditioning to enjoy the war rather than think about it, as long as you are doing right thing, as long as you are doing what is required for an organization as a larger perspective, even if let's say it could be firing an employee to that extent. So that time the conditioning is, oh, how can I do that? I mean, how will I feel bad? Then I think I'm not taking the larger picture. And I think that's what Krishna said to Arjuna also. It is not about you fighting with you have a kingdom, and for their future you need to fight. So for a larger cause, smaller fights are a good thing. And third thing which I have done in conditioning is that I've seen that this is a perennial problem. With conditioning will be there with every person in my organization. So I said I used to take this as a conditioning. One person will say, hey, I cannot do this for XYZ reasons. I will help him to do that and then make him as a role model with others, saying that, hey, he thought he cannot do, but he can do. So many a times it's a mental block and not the real situation. So I converted that conditioning into an organization's upliftment activity because it was bootstrap company. So everything has to be done internally only. And I cannot, and they expect 1+1, whereas we are requiring one person only doing two people's job.
That's
So
right.
so that's my part of take on conditioning.
Fantastic. What a great share, Shripal. Thank you so much. Can I invite Rajesh, please? Rajesh?
Yeah, no, this was great listening to such insights. Um, well, as Shripal said, I don't think anyone's not conditioned, right? So you got to accept that the conditioning exists, right? Um, Especially, a lot of us who went to kind of engineering schools, middle class. I'm just talking about myself here. Also, you asked about, you talk about your own conditioning. Uh, the I was the first generation who came from the village to the city. My parents were in the village, and as middle class, you are conditioned in terms of like fear of failure, loss aversion, trying to get as much information before you can make a decision, optimizing not for upside but for not having downside, right? And that is not the right thing for an entrepreneur, right? Entrepreneur is about action, iteration, finding out, if you're looking at an equation, function of x1, x2, x3, that variable which you won't know unless you actually do, right? And moving beyond, I need a lot of information to make a decision, to let me iterate, let me decide, was a big shift for me, right? As coming from a kind of a middle class, engineering type background, that was a big shift. Now the question is, how do you make that shift, right? And finally, I think it's about awareness, right? If you're aware of, hey, this is my conditioning, these are my strengths, these are my fears, these are my weaknesses, and mostly these are my fears. And to kind of use this analogy, be your own Krishna to a certain extent. And that's the only way forward in terms of kind of for yourself. And for a team, I mean, at least that's what I have seen. Sometimes it's, it's you understand that, hey, these are my kind of weak points. And I consciously try to kind of go beyond that. Uh, and if you're forming teams, you put people with different conditioning together, right? You have people who are willing to take risks, and that's part of their conditioning. The people who are more social, people who are kind of more introverted, and having those. So use your awareness of your own conditioning and awareness of what other people's conditioning is to kind of your advantage to optimize the situation, whether it's as an individual or as a team. So that's something which has worked for me. Again, it's work in progress like everybody else. But that's something I feel like, if you have awareness and honesty about your own conditioning, then you can possibly get past the obstacles. So that's kind of my thought process.
Very nice. Lovely. Dev?
Thanks, Ram. On the similar lines to what Rajesh just shared, the first thing which comes to my mind, about conditioning is the stage of recognizing and overcoming fear. Well, we all have seen this in our initial stages, or probably at any stage where the fear of failure is daunting, and I can recall like my personal experience many times when, to me, there were like significant projects which were at risk, And I was very much similar to Arjuna, whether, if I'll do this, this will happen. If I would do this, this will happen. So, which, I relate to, to the context of this event today. Bhagavad Gita, the chapter 2, verses 47 reads out, when, Krishna is telling Arjuna, you have the right to perform and prescribe, perform your prescribed duties. But, we should not be entitled to the fruits of actions. We should never consider ourselves the cause of the results of our activities. That's something which comes to, all of us, each one of us, that we, because we are attached to, either it's a startup or a person we invest in, we get too much attached. And I think that attachment should not be there. There should not be any attachment to the inaction. Thank you.
Fantastic. So look at what, I'm sorry, Dipti, my sincere apologies.
Thank you, Ram. So here I want to talk two things. One is Krishna, what Ram has pointed out, when he's dejected, when he's scared. But there is another part of, Arjuna. Another part of Arjuna, another side. If you remember, the first earlier shloka says that he's arrogant. He's actually, because he knows that he was the most favored student, he was the most skilled archer, and that another conditioning which has made him arrogant, which has created an ahankara within him, which actually makes him state the fact that I want to see who am I fighting, who is ready to fight with me. This is the ahankara Bisham, and that is also a conditioning which has come because of his childhood preferences. The Dronacharya's favorite student, he being the most, you can almost say, perfect archer and skilled warrior. So this side also is a conditioning issue, and often as an entrepreneurs, we also find that amongst us, when we are successful, there comes a little bit of that arrogance in us that, okay, we are the only ones who can do this, right? And therefore, we many a times when we go for a pitch and a client and all that, we never see who is our opponent and what they are offering. And this definitely, I have seen quite at times that, at least in my business, I've seen that, many times this has led us to, either not, it could be with respect to pricing, it could be with respect to the terms and conditions of the client. We have to take a back seat. Now, the question here is that it is our belief, especially in my case, I said, when we believe that what we do and which is in the interest, because we help people change their mindset, and because we believe that our process is so strong, we also are ready to take that step rather than compromising on us. So that is how my conditioning has been, that when I'm confident and I believe that what I'm doing is right, I have always decided that no, it is better to take a step back rather than compromise.
Okay, that's an interesting share. So, if you look at this whole, I mean, both the sides that we looked at, what Dipti was talking about, the arrogance of an entrepreneur, the arrogance of somebody who's doing very well or whatever. I'll tell you where I've seen this happen in an entrepreneur sometimes. This arrogance leads us, for instance, to a situation where we start believing that we're the only person who knows everything. And in the process, we become a banyan tree, nothing grows under us. This is perhaps a very, very challenging issue for any entrepreneur. Like Shripal said a little earlier, I must train my guy, I must teach him to do whatever has to be done, and I must let the person, so you must tell me, you must, teach me, you must tell me, teach me, allow me, correct me, but let me do it at the end of the day, But sometimes when we become arrogant with our own knowledge, with our own, ideas, then this is also a challenge that we get into. And look at, to come back to, chapter 1, when he is giving so many excuses to Krishna, I mean, saying, boss, ye nahi hoga, wo nahi hoga, this will happen, that will happen, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. This, I think, is something that we have to be very watchful about. it is only when he actually confesses to Krishna that, look, the mockery of attachment, karpanya dosha, is holding me back, Krishna. Please help me. I need your help. I am your Shishya. Please guide me. It's only then that things work. So, how do you deal with an employee, or how do you deal with a partner who's giving you excuses? Do you do what Krishna did to Arjuna? Initially Krishna says, come on, what is this rubbish? What is this unmanliness? I mean, how can you do this? What is this Hridaya Daurbalam? We try and counter these excuses with aggression. That's another conditioning of an entrepreneur. Why? Because we are good. We know our subject. We know what we're talking about. And it doesn't work. But only when Krishna decides that I will take, because you have asked me that saying, I'm your Shishya, help me. And that is when the entire process starts of bringing him out of his conditioning. And I think we need to remember this also. As seniors, as process guides, as coaches, as mentors, sometimes, we tend to trivialize these messages that somebody is giving out. We tend not to recognize some of these inputs that one of our people is coming up with. And, we say, come on, what is this rubbish? Why we kind of brush it aside. And that is, I think, very dangerous for the enterprise. We need to recognize that, yes, there is a challenge that somebody is having here. We need to sit, we need to figure this out, and we need to help them overcome that particular stage of their life, and not just to keep brushing it aside. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to open this up, but just to get a little more, what should I say, a system, a pattern into this whole thing. If you can raise your hand if there is something that you'd like to ask any of the panelists, or if you'd like to comment, I'd love to unmute you, or love to request Shreya to unmute you and do that. Or if you want to type a question in the chat box, then that would be great, because then we can take it up. If there's anybody who'd like to ask any question, if you can please raise your hand, then we can call on you. But my request is that, if you can just keep the question simple and directed to a panelist, that would be absolutely great. We've got anybody? Okay, Aishna Pathak says, how can one recognize their conditioning is influencing their actions? Fantastic. Who'd like to take it? Dev, Shripal, Rajesh, Dipti? How can one recognize that conditioning is influencing their actions? Rajesh?
It's tough. This is the toughest question, right? And sometimes you basically have to listen, right? You have to listen to yourself. You got to look at patterns. You got to think about, hey, what worked and what didn't work? What did I do when things worked, and what did I do when things didn't work? I had an encounter, shall we say, with the person who I shall not name, one of India's greatest bankers, shall we say. And I spoke to him for 10 minutes. And it's very easy to tell people, hey, what your strength and weaknesses, but he kind of identified my deepest fears and why I'm acting the way I'm acting, right? And it really helped me. So maybe somebody else can help you, but you got to be open to hearing something which is unpleasant. And I think that's the key, whether it is maybe somebody else is helping you, or maybe you introspect and see what are the patterns and what has kind of worked or not. I mean, those are I guess the two ways in which you could.
Super.
You could figure out.
Aishna, just a quick answer to your question. How I help people do this, Aishna, is very simple. All of us put down our to-do list, Aishna. I mean, you say that, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. However, if that to-do list is not getting done, that means somewhere that action that you need to take to accomplish that particular task is pending, Aishna. And if that is now becoming a regular habit with you, then you know that that is something that is there is some way, some conditioning of yours is not helping you accomplish your tasks. And like Rajesh says, maybe that is the time to look for someone who can actually help you, find out who you can have a conversation with. And I think, Panchami, that answers your question too, which is if you have a conversation like Rajesh mentioned with someone, that will possibly help. Yes, Dipti, you wanted to come in and say something.
Yeah, so one way which we can do it on a self-analysis, like when you introspect, is you identify what are the behaviors of yours which are repetitive. Yeah, when Rajesh said pattern, that means certain behaviors you repeat. And when it is repetitive, and especially if it is a positive results that you are getting, that's fine. But when it is a negative result, then you seriously need to look into it, because that is what will hold you back, stop you from achieving or moving forward in your life. So yes, repetitive behavior definitely are a serious issues with the conditioning.
All right, thank you. Dev, Shripal, would you like to take the next one? How to decondition once you know that this is a hurdle for me?
Yeah,
Absolutely. I'll go for it.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, go ahead, Dev. After that, maybe we'll take Shripal. Yeah, go ahead, Dev.
Sure. The first thing, I believe, how to uncondition ourselves is first, recognizing the fear, like I mentioned, and then embracing that change and being adaptive. We all, have experienced numerous shifts in personal life, professional lives, whether it's industry trends, market demands. Uh, One such, instance we all know, probably are aware, when digital transformation begin to dominate traditional business models, embracing the change. Leaders started, I think, learning that, being adaptive to the strategies to leverage the innovative tools, leading to a significant competitive advantage. On this, I guess there's a verse 22 on from chapter 2. As a person puts on new garments, giving up the old ones, which is unconditioning ourselves. Similarly, the soul concepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones.
Fantastic. Shripal, any comment on the question that was raised? I think it's a
Yeah.
great question from Panchami.
Yeah.
How to decondition once you know?
Yeah, many a times, once we know also, we think it's a very complex problem. That's the first conditioning we have, is that knowing the problem itself, we feel that it's a very big problem, and how do it will solve? By just telling, will it be solved? So first thing which I have realized is that just start checking with mentors or someone. Maybe what it looks very big for you, it will be a very minuscule problem. And 98% of the problems which I have seen in my life, or which I've observed, is that it is very small actually, but it looks very big because it is very close to our eyes or our situation. So I think moment you start sharing with others, it becomes much easier. I'll give you one example. I was going through when C Square was an SME company, and suddenly when Reliance acquired, we were being supposed to be become very big. Okay, that's how Reliance thinks. And many things, like when in our checklist, oh, this how will I do? This how will I do? I had created a list, and then I went to the top management and said, I'm facing a problem. These are my problem, and how do I solve it? And they just took 10 minutes to, and I took an appointment of 1.5 hours. And in 10 minutes, entire thing got cleared, because at that level, for them, it is the easiest thing to sort it out. So many a times, what problem we go through, a mentor we have already solved for hundreds of them. It is always better to have a mentor, even if you're an entrepreneur. Make yourself answerable to someone, and your life is sorted. The day when we don't have an answerable person whom we don't have to answer, that's where we get stuck. And always people say there is a loneliness at the top. So if we can create one more top layer, a virtual one or a mentor one or someone, I think life becomes much easier.
Very good. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Shripal, for that lovely input. I think we've got some very, very interesting comments on the chat box. And let me just Vinayak says one's conditioning could be his strong trait at one time and a weak trait at another time. Realizing this point and using it to one's advantage is the key, but it is easier said than done. That he says, Vinayak, I completely agree with you. Sundara Nagarajan, I think, says a very interesting point. Most entrepreneurs map to Arjuna, not to Krishna. Those need a good coach like Krishna to recognize their own conditioning and get support to overcome, develop awareness, etc. Very few entrepreneurs might have evolved to map to Krishna's personality. These are the outstanding entrepreneurs who scale up their ventures to unbelievable levels. For others, such entrepreneurs do magic, but the border between self-awareness and self-assurance and arrogance is very thin. Entrepreneurs are contra thinkers. Vinay Dora says it will be cool if the entrepreneurs play the dual role of being an Arjuna and a Krishna, seeking a coach and guru mentor, but kids and teammates when they seek help. Fantastic. Suparna says if we can be our own Krishna, some of these situations can happen. Indrajit Kumar has a question, and I'd love to throw this to Dipti, Dev, Shripal, and Rajesh. Fear is good or bad?
Obviously,
Can
it
I
is
take
very
this?
good.
Huh?
Obviously, it is very good.
It is good. All right, Dev.
So, yeah, fear
Sorry,
is
Dipti.
good. Sorry,
Dipti,
I
It's
just
fear
always
is?
good. It's
fear
always
is good as long as it doesn't freeze you into inaction. That's fine.
Okay.
Otherwise, some amount of fear. For example, when you're driving and if you have a fear of hitting somebody, then you'll be more careful, right? So that fear is good. But sometimes, like Shah Rukh Khan says, he's so scared of being poor that it drives him to earn more and do well in his. So it can be a trigger to do more, or it can be uh, something as an obstacle which will hold you back. So
All right.
you need to know where your fear is taking you.
Fabulous. Dev Malik, fear is good or
Thus,
bad?
the stage before we recognize the fear, it could be daunting, but I think once we have recognized that this fear is there, it always brings these ample opportunities. So I think we have to embrace the change for that, and that transition is the most important part. And if you are able to balance that out, which is probably a different verse from Gita on balancing like personal professional life. I guess you'll start enjoying. In fact, you'll start seeing opportunities in every field.
Very good. Rajesh, fear is good or
So,
bad?
yeah, so it depends, right? I mean, yeah, if fear leads to inaction, then yeah, it's not good. One of the things, again, there was another question about conditioning and the fear. So I'll take an example of capital efficiency in an enterprise, right? There are some companies which are run, without any capital efficiency in your mind. There's certain entrepreneurs who run it in a very frugal way, and that is kind of their conditioning. And let's say they get 50 million in funding, right? Now, the same conditioning which helped you with your capital efficiency, creates this fear that, I don't want to spend the money, but I've raised the money so that I can spend and grow, right? And I've seen this issue with some really competent entrepreneurs. And how do you get across that fear, right? The fear that, hey, I've been kind of going without making sure, there's enough cash, and I'm willing to pay the employees. I can pay my employees now. It's working against me. So, can you recognize it? And can somebody else help you recognize it? That's the question. That's how we move forward. So,
People, fear is good or bad?
Fear is good, and I think most of us, I think everyone have told it very clearly that as long as it doesn't lead to an inaction, that is good because it puts us on the toes. Because everyone has a fear. In fact, if you go to Amazon also, they are fearing now for Zepto, or you go to Microsoft, they are fearing about Google's Gemini. So at any stage, the fear is there, and that fear is helping them to be competent, not get into an arrogant mode, not get into a this thing. But is that fear is kept within you, then it's a dangerous thing. If you can share it out to mentors, again, I'm coming back to that same point, because it can become a conditioning that fear becomes the core part of your this thing. So like people don't take flight because fear. No, that's not the choice. Fear, if it grows bigger than, I think the best example is again from Mahabharata, where Krishna and Balrama goes together in the jungle, and then Krishna says, I will sleep, you do watching activity, and whenever you want to sleep, you wake me up and I will then take it up. So Balrama was standing in front of he was giving a watchman role, and suddenly a monster comes and screams at Balram, and Balram gets shaken up, and he becomes smaller, and monster becomes bigger. And second time again screams, and Balrama becomes too smaller, and then he falls down and calls Krishna. And Krishna, when he wakes up, he says Balrama is fainted. He thought he's sleeping. He started giving watching, and then monster comes and screams, and he says, "Hey." Then Krishna says, "What do you want?" And seeing the courage, the monster becomes small, and finally he ties it up on his toes and then goes out. So fear, if you can face it, it shrinks and then it can be controlled. But fear is required. Without fear, you don't really look up the world. You don't look up the competition. You don't look at into your employees' satisfaction, dissatisfaction. Because if there is no fear of employee leaving, then you will not do good for employees. If you don't have a fear of customer losing, you will not do good for customers. That's my understanding.
Fantastic. I think Ramesh Kautaji has put it very nicely. Thank you, Ramesh Kautaji. Fear, he says, is false evidence appearing real. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ramesh. Truly appreciate the inputs of Sundar Nagarajan ji, Vinayak. I think those inputs of yours were very, very useful. Right. With that, we are at 8:48. I think we're doing very well in terms of time. If there is any specific question anybody would like to ask, yeah, Ravindra Krishnappa, go ahead. Are you able to unmute Ravindra? Shreya, can we help Ravindra unmute?
Hi, Ravi.
Hi, Ravi.
Hey, Rajesh. Hey, Rav. Hi, Shripal. I see a lot of faces. So, Ram, I think fantastic coordination and work. And I'm going to kind of shake up a bit because being an entrepreneur is to be a contrarian in some cases, right? And I think known to do this. So let me pose a few questions, and not specifically to what you're covering as the introduction, but mostly because you call this as Antar Prerana, which means that it has to start with introspection, right? And this goes back to Sundarajan's statement about are you playing the role of Arjuna? Are you playing the role of Krishna? And where do we see ourselves, right? I think what I want to do this is at state at two levels. From an individual perspective, I think we need to separate out our mind from the heart, right? And when I say separate, not to say that it shouldn't be a joint decision, but I think it is, as entrepreneurs, I've always felt that that is where our moral dilemmas come from. They stem from this piece to say, my heart says something, whereas my mind says something else. And mind is rationalizing and saying that this is what is so in some ways, right, mind is more the karma yogi, right? And the heart is more the dharma side of it, or the righteousness side of it, I think. So one thing I think, as people think through this, I would urge them to take this at a plane higher, to say, do I have a duality in myself, not as a character of a Krishna or an Arjuna, but a character of where is my sense of righteousness and where is my sense of logic and rational thinking, right? And there, the reason I'm urging everybody to do this is, for me, the most difficult part is an individual view or an angle or a perspective is very different when I start taking the ownership and the responsibility of the team that is within, that I am supposed to be the supporter of, right? So as an entrepreneur, you're not just carrying your weight, you're carrying the weight of the team and your customers in that sense, right? And there, The difficulty is that the moral dilemma then takes on a responsibility, right? So your dharma is not swadharma in that sense. Dharma is what is the one of the greater good at some stage, right? So I'll stop at this, Ram. I think what I wanted to do was, while I heard all of this, I think a lot of people were drawing direct parallels, right? And I think when you do direct parallels, we are focused on the solution, right? And when I am trying to go to the meta side, I am saying don't focus on the solution, right? Focus on the question. I always believe that questions are the ones that are the source of all our thinking, right? Solutions are
Absolutely.
easy.
Yeah.
So think of the meta side of if you start using the terms as what is good for you and what is greater good as a realization. I think a lot of that resolution stems, and your decisions then go out to say, am I playing for the righteousness of it, or the karma side of it, or the dharma side of it? And I say karma not from my own sins and omens, right? The karma is my duty, right? I'm using karma in the sense of duty, not in the sense of what I beget and how I sow, right? I'll stop.
Fantastic. That's it. Thank you. That's a great observation, Ravi. We will be handling quite a few of these questions as we go along. The next session next week is all about the entrepreneur as a karma yogi, and some of these questions that Ravi talked about are questions that we will be handling during the next week, where we really are going to be examining that lovely shloka, which to my mind has been kind of interpreted in very, very many different ways, but we will explore this from an entrepreneurship perspective. The shloka of Karmanya Vadikaraste Mahaphaleshu Kadachana, shloka number 47 in chapter 2. And we will try and take a look at that and figure out how that particular, how this journey of an entrepreneur can continue. But Ravi, that was a great point. So with that, I think we've reached the end of our session. Any final comments, Dipti, Dev, Rajesh, Shripal?
Thank you so much, Ram. Thank you so much. It was a good learning experience than this thing. So I think now I'm getting attached more to the Bhagavad Gita side of it, and definitely will spend more time with you.
Fantastic, sir. Rajesh, any final comment?
Thank you. And, it was great listening to everyone and the comments. Some of them are, kind of really profound and deep. So thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you so much to the entire team, to all the audience, and Rajesh for coming for this session. This was really engaging, more so since, like Shripal mentioned, I've been lately attached to Bhagavad Gita. In fact, have had gone through different versions of that. Probably, my best would be, I would recommend go and explore either, I Am Gita or My Gita by Devdutt Patnaik.
Sure. Dipti?
First of all, thank you to each and every one of you, especially the people who have participated and asked questions, because it is the questions once that increases your curiosity and leads you to makes you move forward. So thank you for asking those questions, because that has made all of us share our views. We have learned a lot from each one of you. So thank you once again, and hope to see you all again next week.
Yes. And I truly, truly appreciate you, Rajesh, Shripal, and Dheeraj when he was here, for being part of this particular session. And this is the construct, ladies and gentlemen, that we will have over the next 20 weeks. We'll keep exploring, we'll keep trying to understand and figuring out. And Ravi, thank you for that lovely question. I think our conditioning makes us, Ravi, instantaneously jump to a solution. We get into that solution mode. I mean, that it is almost as if somebody wants a solution and therefore is asking a question. Or maybe it's better when you are asked a question to ask a counter question, because then it is his solution, not my solution. So we'll look at all that. Thank you so much, Ravi. Thank you for being here. Please use the links to register, to log in to the next program. And yes, you can please share this information. Thank you once again to all of you, Rajesh, Dev, Shripal, for logging in and being here. Thank you so much, Dipti, for being there. Thank you, Thai team, for making sure that we have a good interactive session.